Are you allowing artificial lids to keep you from reaching your potential?
Here we go.
They did a study several years ago with a jar of fleas. They put a whole bunch of fleas in this jar, and then they put this metal lid on it, and you could hear those fleas jumping up against the lid of that jar. They kept jumping, and they just left them in there until eventually it started to slow down, and then finally it stopped. Now, they didn't die. They were still jumping around, but they were no longer jumping against the lid. And then they did something interesting. They took the lid off of the jar, and the fleas continued to stay in the jar. They did not jump out. Why? Because they had been conditioned that they could only jump so far. And once they accepted that, once they settled for that, then they were no longer able to jump out of the jar, even though the lid was not there. Because mentally, the lid for them was still there. And it kept them inside that jar. Sometimes I feel like we are just like those fleas. Maybe we've jumped up against the lid so many times and it's been painful, it's been aggravating, it's been frustrating, it's been all these things until finally we stop and then the lid is lifted. But we no longer try. Why? Because we settled for the lid. We settled for the fact that we could not go up any higher. Because we tried and tried and tried and tried again, and it just did not work. And so we gave up. We settled. If you're going to break out of the monotony of the mundane and the mediocre so that you could break through to your enthusiasm zone, you have to make the decision to never settle. You may have hit lids in the past. Guess what? Those lids can be removed. Go back, try it again. Every time you mess up is an opportunity for you to begin again more intelligently. And so when that lid is moved, you've got to keep jumping so that you will know. And eventually you're going to find yourself going further than you've ever gone before. But that will not happen if you settle. Never settle. You know what we learned from this jar of fleas? No lids, no limits. No lids, no limits. So wherever God is calling you to go, guess what? God is going to eventually remove those lids. Because He's called you in that direction. He's called you to that adventure. He's called you to that dream. He's called you to that purpose. And the lid will be removed. So continue to move forward. Continue to jump. Even if you're hitting up against the lid, because eventually the lid will be removed. No lids, no limits. God's got you. Never settle for less than what God has called you to do. The lids have been removed. Make the decision to never settle. Make the decision. Ignite your fire and live with enthusiasm. Here we go.